Book 10 is The Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester, first published in 1956 and originally titled Tiger, Tiger. Gulliver Foyle is a mechanic's mate third class, always reminds me of Lister from Red Dwarf, the archetypal fictional nobody. Gully becomes the sole survivor of the spaceship Nomad after being attacked and is left drifting in space until the spaceship Vorga intercepts his distress signal, only to ignore him and fly past without stopping, thus in some ways confirming his nobody status. This one moment in Gully's life dictates the rest of his story. Hell-bent on revenge and with a raw animalistic fury symbolised by the facial tiger-striped tattoos, Gully is triggered to transform, to evolve and to eventually become a resourceful, cunning and awakened man in order to achieve his purpose, to kill the people who left him to die. The Stars, My Destination was one of the first science fiction books I read that made me think, yes, this genre is for me. The book balances an eventful cinematic adventure story with true insight on some important, far-reaching human themes. The idea that man can achieve anything he sets his mind to is obviously well played out here, but it is the balancing of this focus on achievement with the possibility of self-destruction that works so well. Gully Foyle is often described as an anti-hero, and is not really a likeable character, especially at first, but as a reader following his journey through learning to read, to speak, to strategize, and eventually to evolve from a broken, angry animal to a transcendent, deep-thinking symbol of human potential is truly compelling. Add the ability to teleport at will or jaunt, and you have one cool dude and book on your hands. This is one I don't see mentioned a lot. This is Still Aside by Conan Jones, first published in 2019. Still Aside was originally a 12-part BBC radio series, which was later amended and published into book form and can be classified as near-future dystopian fiction. Still Aside is a term that describes the continuous dropping of water, for example from a roof or icicles. And in the near-future Britain, where climate change has severely disrupted the water supply and the country ebbs and flows between flood and drought, the word becomes incredibly powerful. Water trains exist to carry millions of gallons of water to cities, and a project is underway in order to tow a huge iceberg from the Arctic in order to create an ice dock, to utilise the meltwater and alleviate some of the pressure through Still Aside. Water is thus the #1 commodity, and feeding and watering humanity is the #1 item on the political agenda. The story follows some of the people affected by the changes in climate or displaced by the huge projects designed to counteract the changes. Two of the main protagonists are John Branner, a trained sniper working as a guard on the water train, a very important job due to the scale of protest and terrorism aimed at the train, and a professor, who is not named, who notices a rare dragonfly larva which may threaten the required projects. In addition to loving the fact that this book was originally 12 short stories that became a bit of a fix-up, harking back to Simek or Bradbury, I have not seen Still Aside on anyone's list, and I wanted to spread the word. I also wanted to have some representation of the type of work created by the likes of Max Porter, Paul Kingsworth, Claire Keegan and Conan Jones. These authors create sparse, powerful, highly emotive stories where not a single word is out of place, where atmospherics and feeling take centre stage, and where story-triggered images stay with you for years to come. The imagery of Still Aside and even the experience of reading the book itself, see how the words are arranged on the page, sticks with you. I could be doing anything in daily life and a haunting image of a human or water will fill my mind. I will be triggered to contemplate the problems associated with natural systems versus human systems, or the unintended consequences of trying to harness chaos. The book still provokes thought in me. As Nina Allen in The Guardian stated around the time of the book's release, the pleasures Still Aside offer appear to be more aesthetic than dramatic. I tend to agree. Next on the list is The Book of the New Sun, Volume 1, Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe, first published in 1980. It's actually two books, The Shadow of the Torturer and The Claw of the Conciliator. The story is narrated by Severian, a young man raised in the guild of the torturers within a vast decaying city called Nessus, on a far future Earth in the midst of a dying sun. Severian meets Thekla, a noblewoman prisoner, who he pities, and helps die without suffering, and for this he is exiled from the guild. Severian becomes a journeyman, has a named sword, Terminus Est, and has various encounters with characters and environments on his way to Thrax to serve as a banished torturer. The first book ends with Severian in possession of a holy relic called the Claw of the Conciliator, which seems to have miraculous power, and this is a key concept into the second volume. Important events include a fatal duel with Agilus, the finding of the gentle Dorcas, who seems to have troubling memories of a previous life, and meeting, helping, and later being captured by the rebel leader Vodalis, who has access to ancient technology that may impact Severian and his future. What more can be said about the Book of the New Sun? Wolf's expertise at conveying the juxtaposition between Severian's self-described perfect memory and an undertone of unreliability make this read truly intriguing, but also challenging. His use of archaic words for seemingly futuristic things can be confusing, and there are gaps, hints, and mysteries throughout. But I am in the camp which believes that all of it is deliberate, and although the book made me question many things, overall it is a good thing, and makes the story stand out from other similarly themed novels. It is one of the only books I have ever read that made me seek out further information, do extra research, and attempt to thread things together myself. It is a disorienting, often grim, i.e. torturous, puzzle that truly rewards a committed reader. I strongly suggest seeking out the Alzalbo Soup podcast after each book. It's awesome and helped me fill in some of the gaps. I'm only 2 books in and I have it in my top 10 already, and I'm holding off on reading the rest until I am ready. I have a strong belief in life that you get out what you put in, and Wolf is saying, put in a lot with me and I will give you a lot in return. Blindsight is a dark intellectual first contact story. Signals are detected beyond the orbit of Neptune and probes appear around Earth, so humanity decide to send a spaceship on a mission to find the alien source. The spaceship Theseus has a motley crew, ranging from a synthesist who has missing brain parts and no empathy, a linguist with multiple personalities, a cybernetically augmented biologist, and a genetically resurrected vampire. Theseus discovers an enormous alien artifact nicknamed Rorschach, which shows signs of being both organic and machine, and which has the ability to influence the crew in ways that make them question their understanding of everything. I never really liked vampires, but this book was so highly respected within the booktube community, I checked it out a few years ago. This is another book on the list that truly lives with you once read. The power of this book lies in the interactivity and breakdown of the disparate crew playing out alongside the slow and somewhat horrific reveals related to Rorschach and its alien scramblers. The perfectly engineered concepts here make the reader question what it means to be a human and what value evolution and intelligence hold when faced with something so alien and beyond comprehension. Blindsight has one of the most memorable and best crafted endings of any book I've ever read, science fiction or otherwise. To tell you more would to spoil your experience of said ending. This book is highly recommended. Next in line is Neuromancer by William Gibson, first published in 1984 and winner of the Hugo, Nebula and Philip K. Dick Award. Neuromancer follows Henry Dorset Case, a disgraced hacker. Case is a hacker who can no longer physically jack into cyberspace, also known as the Matrix, in order to do his work, as he was caught stealing and as punishment for his crime, his employers damaged his nervous system. We first meet Case as a drug-addled, desperate addict drifting through the underbelly of a neon-filled, corporation-dominated city. Pretty soon, Case gets recruited and repaired by the mysterious Armitage and his colleague Molly, who is a street samurai who has cybernetic body augmentations to help in her duties. Case quickly returns to the Matrix with a renewed purpose and on mission, seemingly once again pitted against powerful corporate entities. But there is always an undercurrent of concern, distrust, and even strange echoes from Case's past. In its simplest form, Neuromancer is a dazzlingly colourful roller coaster ride through a virtually but very knowable world, filled with AI simulacra, deceit and counter-deceit. The story is one part hyper-adventure movie and one part social commentary, with true insight into the ideas of freedom, identity, consciousness, corporate power and social decay. Neuromancer is also one of the most linguistically influential works of science fiction, and as an English literature graduate, this has always appealed to me. In Neuromancer, Gibson coined a lot of terms that are still widely used today. Cyberspace is a word used to describe a habitable space formed through a global network of interconnected computers, and this predates the internet. The Matrix is used to convey the totality of those interconnected computers that humans need to jack into, and this was a true forerunner for movies, manga, and more. ICE, or intrusion countermeasure electronics, is used to describe cybersecurity structures in Neuromancer, but has leaked into the real world within firewalls and antivirus software language, companies and apps. Some terms such as SimStim, or simulated stimulation, which describes the conjoining of the virtual with the physical and the jumping in of one human to the body and experience of another, may not have been as successful in the real world at this point. But wow, are they amazing ideas that 40 years on do not seem so far-fetched. I read Neuromancer in my early 20s. It had an impact on me which is difficult to express, the how or the what. However, I've been in the software industry for 25 years after doing an English literature degree, so maybe I jacked into cyberspace in my 20s and never actually returned. Sirius by Olaf Stapledon was first published in 1944. I think this is the oldest book on the list, but my most recent read. Sirius is a book about a dog, but it is also another book on the list about what it means to be human. Sirius is a genetically engineered dog who is described as having human-level intelligence. The story follows his development towards speech, reading and writing, and abstract thinking, closely monitored by his creator, Thomas. Sirius grows up alongside Plaxi, Thomas's daughter, who he obviously cares deeply for. He discovers and creates music, he is taught maths and philosophy, and excels in many things, but there is always an undertone of stress and strain. From rural Wales to institutions of learning and through World War II impact, Sirius speaks to the beauty and struggle of a curious mind. Sirius may have increased intelligence, but he is also physically still canine, and it is this physical world versus the world of the mind that holds the emotional power of this novel. As a reader, you care deeply about how Sirius is treated by everyone, and the frustration he shows with his physical lot in life is conveyed expertly by Stapledon. I.e., I will always remember Sirius's frustration with humans not understanding how incredible hands are. Although this book was written in the 1940s, I think its relevance still holds true today. The life of the mind versus the life of the body, the ancient and animalistic versus the modern and intellectual, freedom versus entrapment, physical love versus emotional love are all themes that are in discussion and not fully understood today. The writing is traditional and endearing, and the setting of rural Wales provides a glorious backdrop to what has quickly become one of my most recommended forgotten books. If you like science fiction that is more believable and grounded and tries to prod at, or in some cases tear, your heartstrings, then this just might be the story for you. A Fire Upon the Deep is an intellectual space opera where regions of space called zones of thought have altered the laws of physics. Zones range from the unthinking depths, where intelligence is impossible, through the slow zone, where Earth sits, onwards to the beyond, where faster-than-light travel and strong AI are possible, and finally to the transcend, where godlike superintelligences exist. A group of researchers find an ancient data archive near the transcend, and this awakens a seemingly malevolent, previously dormant superintelligence known as the Blight, which begins to infect systems across interstellar networks. Luckily, 2 surviving children crash land on an alien world in the slow zone and have key encrypted data within their ship's computers that might help against the Blight. Also, 2 characters are attacked by the Blight on a communications hub in the beyond called the Relay. They somehow escape the attack and embark upon a rescue mission on a faster-than-light ship for the surviving children. By surviving the attack, maybe they also have valuable information on how to stop the Blight. The reason why I describe the Blight as seemingly malevolent, and one of the reasons why I love this book, is that Vinji deliberately suggests that it depends on the perspective of those involved. To a human, the Blight is cruel, malicious and genocidal, but within entities of the transcend that are so advanced it is almost impossible for humans to contemplate, the Blight is just an efficient alien utility that views the lowly human as humans may view bacteria. In our world, where the race for superintelligence is truly upon us, the theories of alignment, i.e. if a superintelligence is aligned with humanity's goal, is incredibly poignant, and Vinci predicted this 30 years ago to great effect. The overall premise is awe-inspiring, in the truest sense of the word, but don't let that make you think it is a complicated read. It is at its heart a space adventure, with some awesome character design in addition to the conceptual brilliance. Shout out to Blue Shell and Greenstalk, the sentient plants in carts, Scrode Riders, and the pack-based shared mind, woodcarver and steel teams who play a key role with the survivor children. Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes was first published in 1959. Charlie Gordon is a 32-year-old man with an intellectual disability who works as a caretaker in a bakery doing menial tasks. Charlie also dreams of becoming smart and attends night classes to try to improve himself. He is selected to undergo experimental brain surgery, already successfully carried out on a white mouse called Algernon, to turn a person of low IQ into a genius-level intellect. The procedure is successful, and Charlie's intelligence rises rapidly, and he proceeds to learn languages, master complex scientific theories, and achieve genius status. However, he also becomes aware of how he was treated in his previous pre-surgery life, and starts to struggle emotionally, leaving him increasingly isolated. Eventually, the white mouse Algernon begins to regress, sparking concern in what might happen also to Charlie. I read this 20 years before I read Sirius, but I think of both books in a similar way. As a young man finding my feet intellectually in life, this story really moved me. I've always been interested in how humans of varying levels of IQ and EQ interact, and how this talks to the complexities of relationships with others and with the world at large. Flowers for Algernon takes the old term, ignorance is bliss, and dives deeply into what that might mean. The story comments on how the pursuit of knowledge interacts with the pursuit of happiness, and how intelligence and the ability to understand through logic may not be enough. As someone who both enjoys and struggles with measured high intelligence, I related to Charlie a lot when I was younger, and still do to this day. Even as a married and settled middle-aged man with a good network of friends and some level of contentment, my thoughts concerning emotional growth and feelings of isolation are still very apparent. Even if I read another 1,000 books, I still think I will keep returning to Charlie. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, first published in 1968. On an irradiated, polluted and devastated Earth, most of humanity is off-world, encouraged by the promise of android servants. Those that remain on Earth do so within a grim, lifeless existence, where the ultimate status symbol is owning an organic pet. A live animal signifies more than anything else, when most species are extinct or on the brink of extinction. Humans cope through the use of technological devices, such as empathy boxes, which allow the user to experience shared pain and emotional communion, somewhat like a religious VR. The main protagonist is Rick Deckard, a bounty hunter whose main goal is to retire, kill 6 escaped androids who arrived on Earth illegally from Mars. These androids are almost indistinguishable from humans, the key word here being almost. These androids do not have empathy, and thus a bounty hunter uses a process called the Voight-Kampff test to identify androids successfully. Let's just say that the identification of these androids gets more and more difficult, and Deckard battles with his own conscience and questions his morality with regards to some of these entities, especially a seductive android called Rachel. I could have chosen 2 or 3 Philip K. Dick books to put on this list. A Scanner Darkly came very close, for example, but I keep coming back to androids. It was the first or second PKD book I ever read, and it really made me stand up and recognise what this genre could achieve. Yet another book on my list that questions what it takes to be and what it means to be human. Reading this gave me the belief that science fiction could be more than just imaginative, and a lot of that stems from Philip K. Dick's ability to blur your views and destabilise your beliefs. One mechanism used by PKD in androids is to construct 2 mirroring plot lines, one being Rick Deckard, the human bounty hunter out to kill androids, and the other being John Isidore, a genetically damaged human who befriends runaway androids and tries to humanize them. Moral ambiguity and deliberate and carefully structured parallel story threads make sure the reader is also unsure about what constitutes machine or human, thus truly stepping into the shoes of at least Deckard. Humans are depicted as acting machine-like or emotionally numb, and androids are portrayed with self-awareness and emotion. It results in an incredibly disorientating reading experience, but one that is needed in order to deeply understand and feel the contradictions and ambiguity. This is one of the ultimate stories discussing the human and android battle between pre-programming and self-determination, and is one of the greatest examples of how a writing style can affect the reading experience. If you still haven't read this one, why not? Number 1 is Hyperion by Dan Simmons, first published in 1989. Hyperion is set on the eve of an intergalactic war in the distant future amid a vast interstellar civilization known as the hegemony of man. Hyperion is a remote planet home to massive ancient structures called time tombs that are surrounded by temporal fields that flow backward in time. Guarding or emerging from the time tombs is the Shrike, a terrifying metallic godlike being that can manipulate time. The Shrike is feared by all but worshipped by some. As the fate of humanity hangs by a thread, 7 pilgrims are chosen by the Church of the Shrike to journey to Hyperion and to the time tombs. Each pilgrim seeks something, and each pilgrim carries a secret that ties them to Hyperion in some way. During their voyage to Hyperion, they all share their personal stories, and this structure forms the core of the novel. The 7 tales reveal the breadth of the hegemony of man. The priest tells of ancient faith in the Shrike itself. The soldier tells of a warrior's love and a timeless enemy. The poet, a once great writer, discusses art and obsession. The scholar conveys a desperate story of a father's plight to save his daughter from a time-reversing disease. The detective comments on AI through a noir-inspired mystery. The consul tells of betrayal, politics, and rebellion. And the Templar gives the wider, galaxy-spanning impact. By now, most people know that the frame narrative structure of Hyperion is based on Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Like Chaucer, Simmons creates an overarching storyline by revealing detailed, individual perspectives of a diverse cast of characters. This mechanism works incredibly well in Hyperion, keeps the reader intrigued, and allows for numerous and controlled story plot reveals as more confessions are understood and the full story is built over time. As a reader, I was fully immersed, more so than almost all other books I have read. The world building, imagination, and detailed but fast-paced portrayal of action was both cinematic and in many cases haunting. I was especially affected by the tale of the priest, Father Paul Dure, who encounters a parasitic organism called the cruciform, used by the Shrike Church to inflict an endless loop of death and resurrection on its host. This scene is still with me after a few years. The religious imagery and body horror is disturbing, but relevant and engrossing. The sense of foreboding in Hyperion is also still with me. The Shrike must go down as one of the most impactful antagonists of any story, with a mystery and sense of dread like nothing else I have read. The genius of the Shrike is that it is unknown throughout the book. Like swimming in the ocean and knowing that below you is 1,000 meters of darkness, but what else? The Shrike induces fear in the reader, and with no exclusive explanation of motive, this amplifies the fear and dread that surrounds this already visually scary villain. I know that many people put this at the top or near the top of their list, and there is a reason for that. I went into this book a skeptic and came out the other side a Hyperion superfan. No other book has horrified me, but also made me question time, space, and reality. This had a huge impact.